This took place in San Francisco in the early 90s. I was a 33 female living alone in San Francisco. I had a good job and I was very interested in real estate. I decided to walk to a neighborhood grocery store to pick up a real estate magazine. That's what you did back then. We didn't really have the internet yet. It was a rare, warm evening in San Francisco, and there were quite a few people walking around outside. I was walking behind a group of about 5 or 6 apparently unrelated people. At least, they weren't talking to each other, so that is what I assumed. I am rather short, so all I could really see was their backs. Suddenly, without a single word from any of them, they all turned around and started walking back in the direction we had just came from. I was a bit amazed by this and turned to look at them, sort of shrugged it off and kept going in my original direction. As I turned my head, I was stunned to see a man just in front of me pointing a gun, grinning like a madman. He was about my height, wearing those green mechanics overalls, covered head to toe in grease and dirt. Startled, I was about 2 feet from him, and my gut reaction was just to continue going forward. So I passed him, every muscle in my body tense, heart racing, and kept walking. To my dismay, I heard his footsteps following me. Then he started whispering,
"Oh, you're a bad bitch, huh? Why don't you run, bitch? Run!"
At that moment, my mind seized on the belief that he was waiting for me to run before he shot me in the back. He seemed to want it so badly, so I was determined to do the opposite. I kept walking, expecting to feel a bullet slam into my spine at any moment. That shot didn't come, and I believed then and now that if I had run, that would given him the piece of his fantasy that he needed. If that makes sense. Anyway, I headed up to a hill and around a corner to a gas station with people in it. It was dark already when I turned around. He was gone. After reading through some of the human trafficking stories in here, I can't help but feel incredibly uneasy. My heart is racing at the thought of what we may have avoided. Long post but worth it. Stay vigilant, women and men. For reference, my boyfriend is about 6 feet 3 inches and 275 to 300 pounds. He is very stocky, has a military-style haircut, prior military, usually always wears t-shirt with guns on it in some way, and has a fierce beard. This is important for the story. About 3 years ago, my boyfriend and I moved into a house with a couple of roommates near downtown in a big city of Michigan. I had sent him to the store for some staples while I started unpacking. He texted me just after getting to the store saying he had just the weirdest thing happened in the parking lot, but he would tell me when he got home. 10 minutes later, he texted again saying he was super creeped out and jokingly said, "If I'm not on my way in 5, send help." When he got home, he told me that on his way in from the parking lot, a man stopped him offering compliments on his beard. It happened a lot, so he didn't think much of it. The guy was dressed as if he were a lawyer or a real estate agent, with nice shoes and nice watch. Very clean cut, so he wasn't uncomfortable. He said thanks and began walking inside. The guy continued walking with him, asking where he was from, what he did for a living, and if he had kids or wife. My boyfriend got lit up like fireworks, and after working in mental health, He knew to trust it. He made up answers and told him to have a nice day. The man said,
If you're interested in a new line of work, you're just the guy we're looking for.
My boyfriend continued walking without responding and didn't look back. A few minutes into shopping, he noticed the same man was appearing in the same aisles as him, but would then turn around and go the other way. At one point, when he texted me, he said he was sure the man snapped a photo of him from the other end of an aisle. We both commented on the craziness and said, "That is some trafficking shit," but let it go as it was over now and not really wanted to believe it. Days later, we ran to the store to pick up some late night snacks. We parked the car what felt like miles from the store and began walking in. Thankfully, I don't really startle easy when we are out together, because we both conceal carry, so I know if someone tried to attack either of us, we're prepared. But I still jumped when a man's voice yelled out my boyfriend's name and added, "And his pretty wife." My boyfriend said keep walking and don't hesitate. Thankfully, I knew what he meant, and I hauled my ass into the entryway of the store. As I watched them walk and talk while watching for any suspicious people or cars around them. When they were almost inside, I went in the store and started chatting with the greeter, so he didn't get a chance to talk to me. The man again showed up in aisles we were in, and at one point looked to be texting on his phone, but was holding it up in front of him. I am almost positive that he took a photo of us. We didn't finish getting snacks and I just left the store. I waited with the greeter as my boyfriend got the car so I didn't have to walk through the dark lot. I had been a power lifter at that point for a little over a year and was in great shape. I was in the gym every day at the same time due to my work schedule and usually had my girl roommate with me. But today, I was alone for a quick and light lifting session. I wasn't a minute into my gym time when the same guy walked in. I had never seen him there before and instantly felt like vomiting. I texted my boyfriend, but he was away for the military, so he was now panicking from a distance.
Remember your training and keep your cool.
He wasn't in gym attire and didn't have a bag with him. We were also at the gym furthest from the area we were from. They had the best equipment for my personal needs and gains, so I'm not sure why he would have chosen it as he didn't have the "I love the gym" vibe. He came over and said hello, and I politely said hello back, but I didn't continue the conversation. He said a few more things, and a guy a few machines over. I think he could tell that I was uncomfortable. He came over and pretended to be my friend, asking if I was ready to go. I said yes and just needed to grab my things. The creeper man asked where my husband was, and I pretended not to hear him as I kept walking. When I came out, he was gone, but my new fake best friend was waiting on the bench outside the locker room. He said that the man had left, but he had let the staff know what happened, and they said he wasn't even a member, but said he was there to pick up his girlfriend. My new best friend walked me to my car and I switched gyms. Thankfully, we now live far, far away from the city, and I've never encountered him again, and neither has my boyfriend. I honestly believe that they were trying to recruit him to make big money selling women, and that I was just a bonus woman to sell. Thank God for strangers who stand up and save women. You all will never realize just how important you are. I will start this off by saying that I live in a large city in Florida, and in this city, we have a large homeless population. Most of the homeless in the city are mentally unwell, and the city officials do nothing to help them. I am 25, female, recently started dating this guy named Daniel, 30, male, and after going out to eat, we decided to visit the park for some time outdoors. It was a beautiful day, and we decided to sit on a bench under some shade and play 20 questions to get to know one another better and to make out if I am being entirely honest. We had been sitting and talking for about half an hour when this man approached us. He had paint all over his face, but it looked like he had gotten caught in the rain, with the way it was wiped off and smeared everywhere. He was wearing a dirty white shirt and jeans filled with holes, and a pair of shoes that looked like they were falling apart. I was a bit upset, not by his clothing, but by the paint all over his face. It was really out of place in the park we were at. He started off by asking us if we knew of anyone hiring right now, to which myself and my boyfriend told him we didn't, as both of us had not even been working much with the pandemic going on. After every sentence he uttered, he would laugh.
Oh, hey, hey, hey.
Exactly the sound every time. He then told us his name was Xander. He was a juggalo who used to beat backs for a living. He recently was released from jail for assault. He was just trying to get enough money to get back to Ohio. My boyfriend was a lot nicer than I was. I just kind of stared at the guy and asked him if where he could find him, if we heard of any job opportunities. The guy told us that he sat at X gas station every day from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. and then wandered around looking for work the rest of the day. He then plopped down right on the path out of the park by the open entrance and told us he was really glad we would actually talk to him. Remember, he is laughing almost maniacally after every sentence. He said the one of the last people that he tried to talk to had ignored him, and he pulled a knife on her and threatened her. We think this is why he went to jail. He then asked if he could beatbox for us, and my boyfriend said
Sure, we would love to hear it.
he was blocking our way out of the park, and I was terrified at this point. Xander then proceeded to take off his hat and shoes and throw them down the sidewalk, though I have no idea why, and beatboxed for us. He was actually really good, but I was too scared to care at the time. I was assuming that if we slatted on him in any way, then we were going to get injured. There is no way for me to safely call the police, and the park was almost empty aside from us. Xander then went on to talk about how he had a pet squirrel and a pet dog, and they helped him when he was alone on the streets. He also asked us to let him know if we knew of anyone getting rid of any pitbull puppies, cause his last dog had just been taken from him by the police, and he could really use another one. He pulled a pocket knife out of his jeans and started cutting at his pants with it. He then told me that if I knew of any girls who were not too clingy, to send them his way because he would treat them right and take care of them. We had been sitting there with Xander for over an hour and a half, and I was close to tears at this point. A police car drove past the park with the sirens on right then, and Xander abruptly stood up, shoved his open pocket knife back in his pocket, nodded at us, and hurried away across the park. I work a long commute away from home and depend on the train. There were some issues that caused the trains to be cancelled for hours, which left me stranded about an hour and a half drive from home. At the station, there were a few others who were all heading to my city, and we decided to split a taxi. The people were woman number one, we'll call her Lisa. She's heading to my city to see a gig, was a bit tipsy. Man number one, we'll call him Kyle. Traveling with Lisa, they're not dating but from their conversation, seem like friends or fuck buddies. He was beyond drunk and made me a bit uncomfortable because he was pissing in a bush, kept making vulgar comments about Lisa's hot cousin. Man number two, we'll call him John. He was traveling alone and mentioned that he lived in my city. Just moved there but was in the town that we were leaving from, as he just broke up with his girlfriend and was picking stuff up from their place. And woman number two, who I will mention later. Woman number two decides to stay at her mother's house in the town for another evening, so drops out of the taxi ride. That should have been my cue to also drop out, but they had just rung the taxi, and so I didn't want to ruin it as they already calculated how much we all need to pay. I decided to say to Lisa if I could sit next to her in the taxi. She said, "I completely understand. Come on, I'll sit in the middle." So the sitting arrangement was drunk Kyle sat on the front, me sat on the side, and Lisa sat in the middle. Came time for John to get in the taxi. Mind from we were parked, that was no danger to getting in from the other side, as there were no oncoming cars. He opened the door on my side and just stared at me. Then Lisa says cheerfully for him to sit the other side, as she wanted middle seat to talk to Kyle more easily. John stared at us for about a second more, then scoffed and slowly walked over to the other side and got in. The ride itself was awkward as Lisa and Kyle were both drunk and dirty laundry was aired. How I know that they were fuck buddies. Lisa was drinking still before she finally said she needed to go to the toilet and was desperate. Taxi man found a public leisure center for him to pull into. She got out and went inside. Mistake number two. I should have went with her, but I just didn't think about it. Normally, I go with female friends in restaurants or bars, but because it was a taxi and freezing outside, I just stayed. Kyle and John went outside the taxi to smoke a cigarette. Then, John came back, and when we saw Lisa coming out, he scooted over to the middle, then put his hands on my upper thigh and rested it there. Regret number three, I should have said something and made a scene, but I just froze completely. Lisa opened the door, looked at John and looked at me, then looked at John's hand on my upper thigh, 2 inches away from my vagina. She cheerfully said to him, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Please, can we switch? I love sitting in the middle." John looked pissed. He looked over at me, who was still frozen, removed his hand from my thigh and scooted out to make room for her. He grumbled something I couldn't hear before Lisa said, "Thank you," and came in next to me. John sat in his proper seat this time and we took off. Lisa then took my hand and whispered to me, "Woman to woman, I'll make sure you get home safely." I was just staring up and said thank you. Then, throughout journey, about 4 or 5 times after Lisa has leaned forward to speak to Kyle, Sean slipped his hand to her seat so when she sat back down he would touch her ass. Every time she just giggled and say, "Oh, sorry, I think I sat on your hand then." I felt awful because she was in this position because of me. So I apologized and she just repeated that she'll get me home safely, woman to woman. She was very drunk at this point from the extra taxi drink, so I think she just latched onto the mission. When we got close to the city center, Lisa asked where I needed to get to, and I told her the general area. John said he moved to an area that is literally in the opposite direction. His suburb is north. I'm south of the city center. He said after Kyle and Lisa got out, we'll share a taxi together, despite that making no sense as we live in opposite directions. I said, no, that's fine. But he was insistent. Won't take no for an answer. Lisa was too drunk and crying about how much she loves her dog at this point to protect me. I texted my husband that I was terrified and if he could walk up to come get me. My husband fucking booked it over as fast as he could. After we got out of the taxi, John was getting his bags out of the trunk and I said bye to Lisa and just ran as fast as I could to make it to my husband. We say it all the time, but it needs to be said again. Fuck being polite when you feel scared. John probably latched onto me because I was traveling alone, while Lisa was with a man. Also, Lisa is right. Girls need to stick together. I should have gone to the toilet with her. I used to deliver pizzas when in college, and I delivered this order to this house, and a guy opened the door and was like,
Honey, the pizza is here.
but the house was obviously empty, like nothing. No furniture, no rugs, no nothing. Literally floor and walls. It was a massive place and abandoned. No noise whatsoever. The guy told me to come in while he goes to get his wallet, and he asked me to stand in a very specific spot and tells me, don't move. Locks the fucking door, and then he walks to another room to get his wallet and keeps looking back at me. I am waiting for like 10 minutes and nothing. I walk towards the corner the guy went to and get close to his door, and I hear the guy talking about me, like physically describing me, and keep saying it will be easy. That's when I fucking bolted, found the back door, hopped the fence, and quit that day. And never delivered, ever again. I own a duplex and was advertising the 3-bedroom side for families. I wrote a description of what a great neighborhood it was for families, that kids walked to the nearby elementary school, and that the junior high school bus stop was directly across the street, and the high school bus stop was at the end of the block within sight of the living room window. One group of 3 young guys in their mid-20s came to look at the place and really didn't look around much or ask questions, but filled out the applications right there on site. They all denied any criminal background on the applications, but when I did a background check, all 3 came back as former convicts on parole for child sex crimes, one as young as 3 years old. Another woman applied who had an 8-year-old daughter and was going to be living with her. She denied any other co-tenants would be living at the property. When I ran her background, she came back clean, but one of the things that I do when checking backgrounds is checking for the people living at the prior listed residence. That check revealed that a man was living with her, who had a prior child sex crimes with a 6-year-old. Further checking into this history revealed that he and the woman applicant were in fact married. I am much more thorough in my background checks than most landlords because this is my only rental property, and because I worry about my other tenants and their families. I am sure one or both of these applicants could have slipped through if a less thorough screening and have been approved.